he turned Hungary's victory into a death trap, Subutai at Mohi. In 1241, the kingdom over the Sajó River still stood. The Mongols had been checked. The camp was fortified. Dawn was coming. And then Subutai turned that fragile confidence into a massacre. By sunrise, one of Europe's strongest armies was no longer fighting as an army at all. It was a trapped mass of men choking inside its own defenses, trying to escape a battle they no longer understood. The bridge they thought would save them became a distraction. The camp they thought would protect them became a cage, and the enemy they thought they had stopped was already finishing the battle somewhere else. That is why Subutai was so dangerous. He did not just defeat armies. He made them solve the wrong problem while he destroyed them from another direction. And Mohi is one of the clearest examples of that kind of genius. To understand why this battle mattered, you have to see the wider picture. In 1241, the Mongols were not conducting some wild raid into Europe. They were executing a campaign. One force struck Poland. Another drove into Hungary. This was coordinated pressure across a huge distance designed to stretch, distract, and isolate. While one part of Europe reacted to disaster, another part was about to suffer the real blow. And that real blow fell on Hungary. King Bela IV was not blind to the threat. Reports had already arrived. Refugees had already fled westward with stories of cities broken and armies annihilated. But hearing that a storm is coming is not the same as knowing where it will hit or how to survive when it does. So Hungary gathered its strength. Nobles, knights, infantry, retainers, royal forces. This was not a helpless state waiting to die. It had manpower. It had cavalry. It had prestige. It had commanders who believed they could still make war on familiar terms. And that belief was exactly what made Subutai so lethal, because he did not think like the commanders facing him. Subutai was not chasing glory. He was not trying to win by theatrical courage or brute force alone. He thought in layers. He could take separate movements, here a diversion, there a crossing, elsewhere a pressure point, and make them land like parts of one design. His greatest weapon was not speed by itself, it was clarity. He understood the shape of the battle long before his enemy did. At Mohi, the Hungarians made what looked like a sound decision. They positioned themselves near the Sajó River and fortified their camp with wagons and defensive barriers. If the Mongols wanted to cross and fight, they would have to force a narrow choke point at the bridge. That seemed manageable. That seemed organized. That seemed like something a European army could hold. And for a few hours, it even seemed true. During the night, Hungarian forces hit hard at the bridge and drove the Mongols back. Imagine the mood in that camp. Relief, pride, maybe even the first dangerous hint of optimism. The enemy, everyone feared most, had been stopped at the crossing. The line had held. The defense had worked. That was the moment the trap truly began. Because Subutai did not need the Hungarians to be weak. He needed them to be confident in the wrong thing. A lesser commander might have kept hammering the bridge, turning the fight into a contest of stubbornness. Subutai refused to do that. He understood that if Hungary kept treating the battle as a simple bridge defense, then Hungary still had a chance. So he changed the battle itself. Pressure continued at the bridge, yes, but only as one part of a wider design. Elsewhere, Mongol forces moved toward alternate crossings. Bombardment added confusion. More threats began appearing than the Hungarians could easily track. What had looked like one battlefield started becoming several at once. And that is when armies start dying in the mind before they die in the field. Where is the main attack? Where do reserves go? Do we hold? Do we advance? Do we pull back? Are we winning here while losing somewhere else? Those questions destroy tempo. They slow decisions. They spread doubt. An army can still look powerful from a distance while its understanding of the fight is already cracking apart. That is the point where a great commander stops attacking bodies and starts attacking coherence. Subutai was doing exactly that. Before we go further, if you like military history told through command decisions rather than shallow summaries, subscribe, leave a like, and drop the next battle or commander you want to see in the comments. That helps more of these reach the people who actually care about strategy. Now the real collapse begins. As Mongol pressure widened, the Hungarians started falling back toward their fortified camp. On paper, that made sense. Regroup behind defenses, stabilize the line, use a wagon barrier, survive the pressure, and reorganize. But the camp was no longer a shield. It was a trap waiting to become obvious. This is the key to Mohi. Subutai did not just cross a river. He drove his enemy into a defensive space that would stop functioning the moment panic entered it. And once panic enters a crowded camp, everything goes bad at once. Horses jam the lanes, wagons block movement, men cannot see through smoke, dust, and confusion, orders cannot travel clearly, units cannot form proper lines. The more soldiers try to move, the more they interfere with each other. What looks strong from outside becomes suffocating from within. Subutai understood that better than the men inside it, so the Mongols kept pressing. Missiles struck the camp. Pressure continued from outside. Fear built inside. The Hungarians were not simply losing men. They were losing the ability to act as one body. And that is when an army truly dies. Not at the first clash, not when the first rank falls, but when the men inside it stop believing that the whole thing still works. Once that belief broke, Mohi became slaughter. The camp descended into chaos. Some men still tried to fight. Others were already trying to escape. Horses panicked. Narrow exits clogged. Wounded were left behind. Units dissolved into fragments. The wagon camp that had promised protection now trapped thousands of desperate people inside a shrinking pocket of confusion. And once they finally burst out, they did not burst out as an army. They burst out as fugitives. This is where the Mongols became absolutely merciless. Pursuit was their natural element. A retreating but organized enemy is difficult enough to destroy. A retreating enemy that has already lost cohesion is almost helpless. The fleeing Hungarians were broken into isolated groups, scattered across open ground, looking back in terror while Mongol riders peeled off and hunted them down. What had begun as a battle for a crossing became a kill zone across the plain. King Bela IV escaped, but the royal army was shattered, and that mattered far beyond the battlefield itself. Mohi was not just a tactical defeat. It was the destruction of Hungary's main organized defense. The road beyond opened. The psychological effect was enormous. Europe was no longer dealing with some mysterious horse people from the east. It was facing commanders who could plan, coordinate, deceive, and destroy on a terrifying scale. And that is why Subutai belongs among the great commanders, not because he was flashy, not because he won with some magical cavalry trick, and not because his enemy was stupid. He was great because he could make intelligent men commit to the wrong fight and realize it only when it was too late. At Mohi, he did not ask, "How do I smash Hungary head on?" He asked, "How do I make Hungary misunderstands battle?" He widened the problem. He split attention. He forced confused reactions. He turned defense into confinement. And once cohesion collapsed, he made recovery impossible. That is command at the highest level, not noise, not drama, not heroic posing, just pressure, timing, and structure applied so precisely that the enemy's strength becomes part of its own destruction. That is the lesson Mohi still carries. When facing a strong opponent, the obvious question is where to hit, but the better question is often what to distort. Can you divide attention? Can you force the enemy to defend the smaller danger while the larger one is already unfolding? Can you make him commit to the wrong battle? Subutai could, And that is why Mohi still feels so cold centuries later. It was not simply won. It was engineered. In this series, that is what we study: command under pressure, the decisions that bend entire battles, and the minds that see the field more clearly than everyone else on it. And Subutai at Mohi is one of the clearest examples of all. Because by the time Hungary understood that the bridge was never the real battle, the battle was already over.